So it's just Matteo Columbo.
Yes, in Italian Matteo Columbo, as the tenant, I think, in US. The tenant in the fiction, the series.
That's right. Okay. And we were just talking about interrogation, so
yes.
But I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to put a spotlight on you or anything. But just to put us in context here, I typically will ask a sort of small group of friends of the podcast, of our podcast.
Yeah.
Where whenever I go somewhere, I'll just throw out an email and say, hey, do you know anyone here? And where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
And Margaret Atwood immediately responded with, you need to see my wonderful publicist, Matteo Columbo, in Milan. And also she said that you were a magician.
Yes, when I met Margaret, it was in a way a magical meeting, encounter. But yes, when I was a child, I attended a sort of magic club, a magic school for 10 years. So I do some tricks. And sometimes when you tour with an author, there are some moment of relaxation, of pause, of waiting. And sometimes I use my magical powers to entertain her. And Margaret was very interested in that, and I think she has friends that are magicians too. She is a magician, a witch in a way.
She's definitely a witch, yes.
So she has magical powers that express with words and with tellings.
So what do you do specifically?
In magic or in publishing?
To entertain her.
In
magic.
My trick, my opener is a multiplication of bananas. I take a banana from the nose. I show you, even if I cannot go to the
Oh,
podcast.
you've got the bananas with you, awesome.
Yes, I got a banana in my nose, that's the beginning of, and then the banana has a banana in it, and has another banana in it. It's a sort of mise en abîme of bananas.
Wow.
So multiplication of banana. They are not real banana, because if you put in the hand, you can make disappear and come back to the nose. So sometimes I do this kind of joke trick, and Margaret was very amused about it and made me exhibit in a way in front of the Canadian ambassador or in front of other writers. Sometimes when we are at dinner, she says, and now Matteo will show you the trick of bananas. And she's very amused about this situation, and me too.
Right. Okay. So parallels between writing and your banana trick.
Okay, I don't know, maybe you should ask to Margaret, but I think that an important part of writing is also surprising, and the writer is also a magician that constructs a sort of plot in which it plays with surprise. And besides, also in my work, surprise pays in a way, because you have to gain the attention of critics and journalists that are literally overwhelmed by books, the quantity of books. So to give a different communication, something that stands out in the communication, you have to invent something that wonders. I think sometimes, if you succeed, not always is possible.
So can you give me an example?
Yes, for instance, a few years ago I was promoting a book, a little book about touching the books. It was about the pleasure of the book, of the paper book, tactile also. And of course, in publishing we don't have a lot of budget and money, so you have to think of something, and I thought just to take a paper and write on it. I printed on it. Don't touch. Don't open this envelope. I just created, and I put the book in this piece of paper. Just a very simple thing, but it was noticed in a way, and it was very coherent to the theme of the book. And so this don't touch, don't, and so you have, of course, you touch and you open is a false warning in a way. But
yes, well, and also whenever you say don't do something,
yeah,
of course people do it.
Like don't think at the elephant, don't think of the elephants, that kind of things.
Yeah. Okay.
Or I could do also another example that I like to tell, that is about a book of psychology that was about disturbi ossessivi compulsivi. Is when you do always the same thing, you wash your hands every minute, you check the keys that are locked, this kind of obsession.
Yes, obsessive compulsive.
Yeah, that kind of thing. It was a book about this, and I thought, okay, I do a mailing. I send a mail to the journalists, and I sent one mail, and after 1 or 2 minutes, I sent a second mail saying, I'm not sure you received my email, and then a third mail after 7 minutes. Okay, and it was nice thing because, for instance, usually this kind of mailing I receive 10, 20 answers. For that I received about 80 answers, and all were amused and not annoyed by the strategy.
Well, isn't that a huge part of any kind of communication? If someone sees that you're clever, people want something that's clever.
I hope so. It's a way also not to get bored myself, but of course to catch attention you have to... Yeah. Not always you have the time and the idea to do that, but it's a nice... in this world of noise, of a lot of communication, of a lot of emails, is to find a way to
get through that.
To get through is...
And you say that a big part of it is you coming up with ideas that will surprise people.
This was an example because of my magician's expertise, but of course you can find other ways. It depends on the books. I'm very lucky to work in a publishing house, Ponte, alle, Grazie, that is part of a publishing group called Gruppo Editoriale Mauri Spagnol, GEMS, that is the second Italian publishing group. My publisher is a medium publisher, but we publish about 70 books a year. But we publish a variety of books, and that I think it's a difficult thing because you have to speak to very different kind of authors, of different journalists, because very, very eclectic subjects are... We publish book on very different subjects, but it's also a very good occasion to find different different strategies to communicate them. Of course, if I publish a novel of Margaret Atwood, or a novel by a first published Italian author, because it's very different kind of things to say to the journalist and the way to convey them to the book.
So yeah, you have to tailor your message to obviously to the audience, but also you have to consider what the book is saying, if it's serious, is that what you try to do, like with this obsessive compulsive example? Mm-hmm. Ideally, you do something like that for each book, depending on what the subject matter is, right?
Yes, not always you succeed in this kind of ideas. Sometimes there is a more traditional way to work a book. Of course, when you have to present a book of a very well-known writer, in a way it's easier because you know what you are selling in a way.
Yeah,
and
they have an established brand in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have my profession is to stop the request in that case. If,
you mean, yes, that's right. She can't see everyone, right?
yeah.
Yes.
There is a very different way to work with an unknown author that you have to construct in a way. You have to insist and to sometimes to pray even. I assure you, this is interesting. This is very
It's worth your time.
Yeah, and sometimes as you work with a pop star, we are not used to pop star in publishing, but sometimes I think of Margaret. I think also of we published Slavoj Žižek, that is a philosopher very well known, Noam Chomsky. In that cases, you have to filtrate. You have to in a way decide what is. Good and to say some no's.
No's, that's right. Yeah, because everyone wants to talk to them.
Yeah,
I suppose.
And we have to, of course, to save them because if they have to write, sometimes they cannot answer to interviews or write pieces for the papers all the time.
Right. Yeah. Tell me a bit about your publishing firm. Then I'm interested in the fact that they publish all sorts of different types of books. Is there a sort of editorial line? Is there a philosophy behind that? Just what's great? I mean, is that it?
Yes, I would say that if there is a philosophy, even if it's not written or told, but it's by Luigi Spagnol. Luigi Spagnol was our publisher. He died a few years ago.
Okay.
But he did a sort of imprint to the imprint.
Understood. Yes.
And
his personality.
His personality.
Yeah.
He was a very clever and curious man and cultivated. And he has had a lot of interests, very various, kitchen, cooking, music, literature.
Yeah.
And so I think this sort of, first of all, Ponte alle Grazie is quite a mirror of his complex personality and his curiosity. He considered every single book a sort of unicum, a sort of things that you cannot replicate. You cannot imitate another book. A book is like a person. It's one individual thing.
Which means you have to talk to people about it in a unique way. You have to emphasize how unique it is.
Yes. Even in the cover design of our publishing imprint, there is a lot of freedom and individuality. There are not a lot of... yes, there are some graphic design things that comes back, but every title is considered one person, and you have to dress it for that person. And we published very different people.
Well, I was going to say, how did you get Margaret Atwood to? Did you have to convince her to come to your house?
Yeah. When I arrived working at Ponte alle Grazie is about 20 years ago, Margaret Atwood was already published by our publishing house, but it wasn't easy to have her in Italy, because I always asked her, could you come to Italy, this very important festival, this very important occasion?
Yeah.
And she told, yes, but I have to work. And it was very difficult. I went out of topics to convince her.
Yeah.
And an editor working for our publishing house told me, ask her again. And I told everything I could to convince her. And he gave me a great lessons that was insisting
Yeah.
is an argument in itself, is a motivation in itself.
Excellent. Yes. Persistence.
Persistence is, yeah.
She would admire your
Persistence.
efforts. Yes.
I hope so. I think also that when she came for the first time in Italy and we met, then things changed, of course, because he understood the love of the publisher for her books, and she was more willing to come back in the following years.
So what you're saying, though, then, is that her physical presence obviously is important and makes a huge difference?
Yes, it could do a difference, of course. Of course, the success of Margaret in the last years is also due to other factors, as the TV series and this kind of... She was always very well considered from a critical point of view. But I mean, in terms of readership, at least in Italy, the last 10 years she had a big increase in sellings, and I think part of it is also due to her presence too. She is an author that brings something more when she is present. She makes people fall in love, I would say. That's the first time my publisher that I already quoted, Luigi Spagnol, met her in I think in the London Book Fair.
Yeah.
He told me this sensation of just falling in love in a way, and that was my impression the first time I met her in Rome 10 years ago or something.
Well, what I love is just how playful she is. You know, when you communicate with her, it invites good-natured barbs and humor, and it's just it's always interesting.
Yes, she's interested in everything. She knows everything. She appears to know everything.
She's never wrong. That's right.
Once I asked her, how do you know about comics so well? And she answered, I know everything.
That's what she said to me.
And that was astonishing at first, because when I hadn't met her yet, you received from the entourage, from the agents, also a lot of requirements.
Like what?
Like even practical one, but even strange one. Like you have to let her find in her hotel room a lemon sliced, a bit of salt, and a carrot. It's weird.
Nice.
Sometimes
no tequila though.
No.
Okay.
And these requirements at first makes you think, oh, this is like a very high demanding author. Yeah. And maybe they are done also for that, to let you think this and to be prepared for any convenience.
Yeah.
So when she came off the plane and I met her, and she's very nice and very easy also. She doesn't have all these requests, or she's very humble person in a way.
Well, what strikes me is that her personality sounds a lot like this publisher you've just mentioned.
Yes, I think that is why it worked in a way.
Yeah.
The right publisher for the right kind of author.
Okay. We're in Milan right now, and yesterday it just so happened that there was an exhibition of the photographer Helmut Newton. It's on now.
Yes,
and I went to it, and one of the things that struck me was, you know, there's all sorts of photographers are good with light and shadow, but more than anything, it's the story they want to construct. How they position people, what they put in the frame. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me a bit like what you do. You're coming up with a story. You want to be different. You want to tell an interesting story. You want to put things in the frame that maybe other people don't put in.
Okay, I didn't see the exhibition of Helmut Newton, but I would say that it's a good metaphor of the work you have to do, because also for the thing, yes, you have to frame your discourse, your presentation of books, but you have also another thing with photography is you have to catch the moment. You have not a lot of time.
This depends on what kind of photography you're talking about.
Yes, I mean that you have to catch the attention of the journalist or the critic sometimes in a very small amount of time, because
because there's the type of photography where yes, you have, if you don't click the moment, then you've missed it. Whereas the other approach is you can take a whole morning and stage something with models or with a certain, you want to get a certain time of day or whatever. They're different. Obviously, there's different types of photography, right?
Yeah.
Is there different types of publicity?
Yes, I think I would say that you in English called to pitch something.
Yeah.
And some books are more pitchables. I don't know if it's pitchable than others. It's not always about their quality, but sometimes you have, this novel is about, and you can in just one sentence saying it in a very interesting way. Sometimes it's very hard for some kind of literature, especially, to condensate the message in one sentence or something like that.
Yeah, but as you say, you almost have to have an elevator pitch ready just so you grab their attention and stop them enough to get them to listen to more.
Yes, this is of course a problem when also you do a magic trick or a show to grab the attention at first. And then, of course, the relationships in the years with journalists and critics are based also on other things. So you can... I think the important thing is, I would say something strange maybe for a person who works on communication, but to tell the truth.
Yeah, you want to be trustworthy.
Yeah, because if you can lie, you can say this is very beautiful, and then it's bad, but it's very short term
relationship
strategy. And so,
well, this is the thing that bothers me so much about most of what goes on in book publishing, is that there are these big promises of this phenomenal.
Everything is the phenomenon of the
in most cases, it's just bullshit, and it gets you disappointed right from the start. Mm-hmm. So how do you compensate from wanting to get attention and telling the truth? How do you adapt that?
You learn to tell the truth. Maybe you work more on omission than to telling lies. You find the right phrasing. Sometimes also the syntax could vary. Is a rhetorical problem, but I would say there is an anecdote on Jesuits, the priest that says that it's very different to say to your superior, "Can I pray while I smoke?" Or can I smoke while I pray? A different syntax can produce the opposite result. So you have to tell what you can tell with the book you have in the best way you can to convince the other that is interesting, and sometimes, of course, you have to exchange. I give you something good if you. If you speak about something not so good.
That's right. Well, it's a bit like publishing in general, as if we succeed with this one title, well, that means we can go and spend some money on another title.
Yes.
That may not be as easy to sell.
Yes. As publishing is not very rich industry and is not very expensive to produce a book, I think, of course, against doing a film or TV series or
Yes.
something else.
Yeah.
You just need it's easier and easier, like with digital printing and with everything. You tend as publishing to do maybe more books, and you cannot, as you don't have the recipe for the bestseller, and you cannot, you
Yeah.
just try more paths and ways and books, different books, and then sometimes something spark.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not sure exactly where I'm headed with this, but it seems to me like the difference between a male and a female. Like a male has billions of sperm, right? And
Yeah,
a
yeah.
woman only has one egg. Maybe you could help me with that. Do you think there's a parallel there somehow?
I never thought about that. It's quite could do something. I don't
It's
know.
like you want to you want to make one big life. You create life, but you have to send out all sorts of
Yes, and most,
attempts.
and most of readerships is female readerships. So I wouldn't say I haven't said that because I wouldn't be accused of sexism. Or,
No, I don't want to either. But one of the things that was so interesting for me yesterday, going around the Duomo, and there's this magnificent sort of commercial cathedral there, this mall, where as we were walking through there, and there's
La Rinascente, maybe.
yeah, it's a big mall with a big
Yeah,
dome,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So first of all, Rizzoli is there,
Rizzoli.
the publishing house.
Rizzoli. Sorry,
Sorry,
Your
Rizzoli.
pronunciation.
Yeah,
I
it's
couldn't
me,
catch.
yeah.
Yeah, in the gallery.
And I believe this is the only shop they've got in the world, except for the one in New York. It's here. And so we were walking along, and again, just in that beautiful domed alleyway, if you will, there was this beautiful antiquarian bookseller, Bozzo or something like that. Bozza, I think it's called.
Yes, it's an antiquarian bookshop in the gallery. Yes.
And of course they said it was the oldest in Italy, which
I don't
may
know.
or may not be true. But it was beautiful, but we didn't even know it would be there. And then there was Frettinelli.
Feltrinelli.
The publishing house, had this
Important chain.
big shop.
Big shop, and it's also part of a chain. While Rizzoli is just one shop in
That's
Milano.
right. But it's
Feltrinelli,
this vertical, isn't it? It's the publishing house with the bookstore.
to tell the truth, the publishing houses of their bookstores are based otherwhere in other places.
It's
but-
still the same company though, right?
No, Feltrinelli is independent, is the third Italian publishing group. Rizzoli is part of Mondadori.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
But what I'm getting at is you do have a connection between the publishing house and the store.
And the retailer, yes.
Yes,
sometimes.
and the
Also
same-
Mondadori there is. in
and
Piazza
and that's right, they've just opened up.
Yes.
They said within the last 3 weeks.
Yes, it was a sort of trasferimento, displacement. There was also always a Mondadori store in Piazza del Duomo, but now as a new,
Bigger.
as a bigger place.
Is your company, maybe you could just tell me how is it connected to retail at all or not?
We have an important connection with distribution. So the part that is called Messaggerie, that is a very important distributor in Italy, but we don't have branded retailers.
Okay.
This distribution has some bookshop called, a web of bookshop called Il Libraccio, that is also specialized in used book. They sell new books, but also scholastic and used books.
And it's here in Milan, there's one?
Yeah, there is more than one in Milan, one in Porta Venezia, then more, I think 4 or 5 places.
Okay. So there are lots of connections in the Italian market between publishing houses and bookstores and distributors.
Yes, Rizzoli is more si dice di rappresentanza of just to have a window, but Feltrinelli is the most important book chain, the equivalent of, in a way, Barnes & Noble in the US.
Okay. Tell me, what else do you do then for Margaret? What do you do?
What do I do for Margaret besides magic tricks? I repeat, working with Margaret is very easy and very rewarding in a way.
But what I mean is, like, what are the tasks that you do?
Okay, so, of course, in the years you know her readers. I mean, her professional readers, or the critics that likes her, and so it's easier, of course, to send reviews, copies, because in a way you know your audience, your specialized audience.
How many are those, do you think, roughly?
No, I couldn't quantificate exactly, but about 100 or something.
In Italy?
I mean, not the readers, not the regular readers. I mean the professional readers. I send a review copy, something like that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Professional reader would be someone who works for the publishing house.
No, critics.
So you're talking
Journalists.
Journalists. You send out about 100.
Yeah, about.
In effect,
more.
right? To say this is a new book that's just come out. If you want a physical copy, you can call me and we'll get you one.
Yes. He said the readership of Margaret in Italy was increased a lot in the last 10 years.
From what to what?
I wouldn't say exact figures because I'm not sure they are perfect, but from 1,000 to hundreds of thousands. Especially for the main titles, of course, but it was about. I think that in the last 10 or 15 years, she multiplied her readership by 10.
So it would go from 10,000 to 100,000, roughly.
Something like that.
Okay. Because I read somewhere that Mordecai Richler, who was a well-known Canadian author, his, I'm thinking it's Barney's version, I think.
Barney's version, la versione di Barney in Italiano.
Yeah,
in Italian.
It sold over 200,000 copies, hardcover, maybe more. This was an old number, but it was more than he sold in the United States.
Yes, sometimes there are these kind of things that a book has more success in other countries. It's very difficult to predict them. And for sure, Mordecai Richter in Italy was a huge success by Adelphi, published by Adelphi in Italy. Sometimes it's very strange. I heard that Susanna Tamaro, that is an Italian writer that has had a big success with Vado ve ti porta al cuore, that is a book I think 20 years ago or something, even more. If she was published in France, she didn't work so well, even if France is quite near to Italy, quite culturally near.
Yeah.
Instead, when she was published in Turkey, it was a huge success. And you think that Italy and Turkey maybe are more different than France and Italy. It's not always predictable. If an author has success in one nation, it's not exportable in a automatical way.
Yeah, but it does sort of. It's the same idea, isn't it? It's such a, to use an English term, it's such a crapshoot. It's like with the dice.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, when you're a publisher, you publish a ton of titles in hopes of getting a bestseller. But it's the same sort of big chance that you're taking by taking on the rights of another writer from abroad in your own country. It's just a crapshoot.
Yeah.
But sometimes it hits really big.
And sometimes you try to launch an author, even a bestseller author abroad in your country, and it doesn't work. And then you try again, or another publisher try again after a few years, and you succeed. So it's also what the Greek people called the kairos, the right moment to do one thing, the right timing.
Okay, what else do you do with not just Margaret, but all
With
your
authors.
clients? The types of things that you do.
If they come from abroad, you invite them maybe for book tours. You do events, presentation. You also follow book prizes. That is a part of the publicist work. So to decide which titles to candidate, you see, to the prizes, and some prizes, very few. There are a lot of in Italy, but very few that change the destiny of a book. I mean, from a selling point of view.
It's not such a big impact.
Few of them has Premio Strega, that is the most important literary prize for Italian fiction. Campiello, that is a prize based in Venice, also very important. Then there is a more popular, I would say, best-selling prize that is called Bancarella, that is linked to the booksellers, a sort of prize of the booksellers. So they tend to give the prize to a book that already sells well and is quite popular already. It's less maybe artistic prize, but
it's more commercial success.
Commercial, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, working with prizes for a literary publisher, and my imprint from the point of view of fiction, published very high brow literature. Prizes are an important part of course. Authors are happy to win prizes, but some of them also can change deeply the sellings of a book and increasing it. So it are important part. Then what else? Then you, of course, there is of course the new thing. Of course, till now I spoke often of literary critics and papers, but of course now we know that the digital PR and this kind of word can determine a success, a book success sometime. And it's a very difficult part to control in a way, because sometimes something happens that you cannot control even with old books, with books not in promotion.
Yes. Or backlist, yes. Backlist. This is happening all the time on TikTok, apparently.
Yeah.
Someone will pick up on a book that's 10 years old and start emoting about it on TikTok, and then the next thing you know, it's bumped back into the best-selling list.
And it's very difficult to control it and to influence. You can try try some ways, connection.
I've heard that Facebook is a bit bigger here still than maybe others. Is that right for you?
Do you think Facebook? I don't know. I would say that now the center is of social PR communication is Instagram in this way.
In Italy.
Yes, and TikTok is exploding in a way. Also
right.
For book, they also call book talk in a way.
Yes.
But for some kinds of books.
Yes.
So it's not for every book or for everything. And it's very difficult to control. Sometimes you have to follow in a way when there is a flame or a sort of word of mouth that explodes. You have to follow it in a way. It's difficult to determine it, I would say.
Do you have to physically get involved or literally get involved? Do you write tweets? Do you write posts for Instagram, or have you got someone that specializes in that?
Some publisher has, it depends on the resources and budgets. For us, it's we do by ourselves in a way. It's not so professionalized yet.
So you've got handles on each one of these platforms, and you have to put a little note out that says, "Here's the latest," or
Yes.
"Here's
Yes.
a picture of me with whoever."
we try to do this for in the most possible ways, and sometimes we work with specialized for maybe for singular projects that we think are particularly adapti fit the social media.
Can you give me some examples of successes you've enjoyed?
Success in social media?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say our publisher is very oriented to that, but in our publishing group there are, for instance, this is not is quite unusual, but one of the books that works better as bestseller in Ponte, alle, Grazie was a book that is not representative of Ponte, alle, Grazie in a way, that is called Come smettere di farsi le seghe mentali e godersi la vita. It's how to stop literally jerking off your mind and start living. It was a self-help psychologist, nice book, and it works so well, but I think he never had a serious journal article on it.
It was all.
It was about the title, about the.
Yes. Yeah.
You can give it as a present. It was very nice, also a clever book in a way, but it wasn't considered a serious psychology book to review on the newspaper. So that kind of books maybe we can find a way in this kind of I just show you, I just tell you, and I just present you.
And as you say, the title, I've heard that elsewhere. It's like if you've got some kind of weird, funky image of something in your bookstore, for example, like a silly looking something, you put that up and it'll get way more, attention than
like we said, there are books that are pitchable, there are books that are Instagrammable.
Yes.
Instagrammable, I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. Just winding down then, we're in Milan, and as I said, I could not believe that in this small space, this area around the Duomo, all of these bookstores that were connected to publishing houses, they had like big box stores almost, like there were maybe 4 or so, 5 even, Barnes and Nobles right around this beautiful big church within 5-10 minutes walking distance.
Also Oakley is very beautiful.
I was just about to say, and I interviewed her. Yeah, so that's extraordinary.
I heard a few years ago when I was attending a master in publishing, not few years ago, 20 years ago, sorry. So the statistic is not new, but it's quite significant that Milano, that is the publishing town in Italy, produce 80% of publishing. And in the center of Milano, the bookstores in the center of Milano sold years ago, but I think that the proportion is still like that almost, 34% of the books of the country. So Milano is, in Italy, is this, for sure the city of publishers, but also the city, a city of readers.
Yes, and so if someone who loves books decides to come here, there's just this experience of wonderful big bookstores, new bookstores, but there's also these all smaller places. I had a place recommended to me called Verso Books, which was wonderful. It was a little bar and a bookstore, and then upstairs I went to a reading. and then you could sort of hang out and have drinks and be around books. It's
Yes, in the last, I would say, 10 years, a lot of independent small bookstores closed, I must tell you.
Yes.
But some of them open too, and Verso is a very good experience, even if I think about property that they are part of a chain. They are not completely independent, they start as independent. But yes, Verso is a very good example of events, literary events. We do a lot of them there for narrative fiction and for
poetry was
poetry as well, yeah. And few and yes, it's a good dimension. It's like in New York there is a bookstore like that, almost that has a little bar and is independent. I cannot now recall the name, but
okay.
There are realities, I think, that can compete with chains if they work with intelligence and creating a sort of meeting point of cultural interest.
Well, and this is exactly what Ricky Calaveros told me. It was a well-known
SEM.
About SEM, yes, this publishing house that they had this big space and they invited people every Thursday to come and have a big dinner with them.
Yeah, I know. It was a very lively place. Unluckily, in the last months, they had problems. They were acquired and something changed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the model, economically works.
Yes.
But it was a very, very good experience, and I attended some events
there.
They really did a publishing house with a stress on the house thing.
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting thing also about my publishing, because even if it's part of a group, of a publishing group, every imprint has an individual personality and is in a way a thing that an author can call house, home.
Yes, that's nice. I don't think I've heard that before. The idea of calling this house, as an author, calling your house a home. Just finally then, I'm interested in this big picture, more philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
What you've learned by having books in your life all this time.
Okay, I think it's nice to work with books in a publishing house instead of working, in a university, or to work in a bookseller too, because it's a quite in the middle experience between an abstract way to see culture. Where in university you have to think about ideas to change it, but you don't know what people really read and like about books, or why they book, and you have to do so you have to do a reality check with publishing, because you always have to confront with an audience, with a reader, with a journalist that maybe doesn't want to, even doesn't love to read a lot, but at the same time you are not just a seller or so too much reality. You can work with ideas, with books in a way that is pragmatic, because you have to sell. They are also products, but they are not only products. Where when you speak with an editor or with an author, you feel the love for literature, for ideas, for culture. So, but it's love in the world. It's not outside the world.
Yeah, it's not abstract or ivory tower.
So I would say that my relationships with books, working in the publishing industry, has this kind of approaches, not idealistics or too intellectualist, but even it's not, but it preserve the charm and the culture that in books and the magic that in book is inside them. Sorry for my English that is so bad.
What about the meaning of your life? How is living the way you've lived? Like, what's your approach to life?
This is a very wide and difficult question to answer on a Sunday morning, but in Italian we would say that is a question of Marzullo. Marzullo is a TV person that makes very intimate interviews late in the night on television, also with writers, asking this kind of thing. Is dream that governs lives, or lives that governs dreams? This kind of very important and philosophical question. I don't know the meaning of life. It's very I cannot answer.
How do you get through the world then, more pragmatically?
Meeting people, reading books, and try to find more than answers, questions.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with Matteo Columbo, who is Margaret Atwood's publicist in Italy, and we're in Milan. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
I want to spend the next day or so.
Yeah.
I'm going to. And I just want to relax and maybe read and write a bit. Is there a place you can recommend just to hang out in? Like a nice bar or cafe?
Yes, I'm thinking, because in the center of Milan, not so much, I wouldn't say. Center. Maybe a nice place is called Bar Magenta. It's a historical bar near Cadorna station.
Okay.
I like a lot pastry shops.
With tables and chairs.
Yeah.
Yes,
there is one. There is one near Verso, not so far from
Okay.
Verso, but I have to tell you the name exactly because I have to check.
Is there a special pastry that you like better than others?
The specialty of Italian pastry in Milano is pasticcini, that are the small ones. There are different kinds with fruit, with chocolate, with cream. It's very, well, it's my passion. Okay, pasticceria Cucchi, and has tables to sit. Pasticceria is main pastry shop, patisserie.
Yeah. It's near Verso, you say?
Yes, it is. As you can see, Verso is like here, and then 5 minutes walk. So.
Is there a really good used bookstore in town?
It's this chain called Il Libraccio that I told you.
Okay.
They are I think the first actor in used bookstores.
Okay, so they have used and new?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's perfect.
And you can find also review copies of my work. You can find some journalist is so fast to get rid of their copies that you can find something not yet out in the bookstores used in this bookstore section.
Right.
And sometimes with the dedication with the sign of the author or the name of the journalist.
And you can typically find that at Libraccio?
Yes. A good shop of Il Libraccio is in Porta Venezia, part of time near Porta Venezia. When I go to Paris or New York or even a new town, I always look for bookstores and pastry shops.
Well, but you look at you, you're slim. You must walk a lot to get to the pastry.
I walk a lot when I'm in town.
Yeah.
But now I have to show you a little trick
Oh,
to
super.
prove that I can do something
More
more
than-
than bananas.